What a season it's been for PSG and Luis Enrique. In the semifinals of the Champions League, this is a supremely talented side, but it's a new era of PSG. There's no more Mbappe, Messi and Neymar left a couple years ago. This is a young squad that has really shown out. Already a talented squad, and then they add Kavica Kvaratskhelia in January, and it really has just taken off since then. And you see here, they are level with Barcelona as the favorites on odds to win the Champions League. Why? Why is the reason that maybe we didn't expect PSG early in the season to be this good?
Well, I think you look at what Luis Enrique was dealing with, right? Getting rid of Mbappe, arguably the best player in the world, right? Now you have to make some adjustments. And he's kind of molded this team into what he wants it to look like, a younger group. If you'd have told me 2 years ago that they would be in a semifinal after getting rid of Mbappe, if you think back on the progression of Kolo Muani, right, who's now at Juventus on loan, I would have never thought 2 years down the road this is what this team would look like. And then you mentioned they pull off a January window move for Kvaratskhelia, who is one of the best dribblers in world football. Now, all of a sudden, he's molded this thing into what he wanted it to look like. They lost 3 games in Champions League, but one of them was to Arsenal, I believe. I forget, they lost Bayern Munich, I think, by a goal.
Atletico Madrid as well.
Atletico Madrid by a goal, right? So it's not as if they were so far off the pace, but I think what we're seeing right now, Lisa, and you're probably going to show us some points here about it, this has been a growing progression for Luis Enrique.
You're going to run us through a couple of reasons as to why PSG will win the Champions League.
Yes, I mean, we've started this conversation off on the right foot because of how stacked they are and everything that runs through it. But really, when you whittle it down to 3 things for PSG, for me, the first one comes in this loss in leg 2 against Aston Villa. This was a huge motivator for this team because they got comfortable. And we hadn't really seen PSG get comfortable in a match and be forced to come back, be forced to rally at the end of the game, be forced to have your goalkeeper bail them out in situations. And when you underperform for 45 minutes, 70 minutes in a game, you learn more in that 70 minutes than you have throughout your entirety of your season. The fact that they're coming off of that match, now going into these games against Barcelona, this is an opportunity for PSG to use that as a motivator. So that's my number 1 factor.
Can I add something to that? Yeah. They went to Anfield and got the and got it done, and that helped them go to Aston Villa, where they suffered. They knew that they were going to suffer at moments. Right now, they're going for a third. So I think if you're pairing them against Arsenal in the psychological battles, I think PSG has been through a heavier gauntlet or a more dangerous gauntlet psychologically in this back and forth battle than Arsenal, and that bodes in their favor.
Especially against 2 English teams. You know you're going up against another English side. That plays on you a little bit. Number 2, PSG has the best fullbacks in the world right now. They absolutely do, because this fullback pairing of Hakimi and Nuno Mendes is fantastic. The style of play that PSG wants to play gets Mendes and Hakimi higher up the pitch. They feed into that. They do such a good job. I mean, athleticism aside, they're bought into this style of play and how they want to do it. They recover. They're contributing on all sides of the ball, and it's impossible to slow them down. The game plan has been structured for PSG, and it relies on the backs of these 2 players as their fullbacks. It's everything runs through them.
Yeah. I think Hakimi is extraordinary. He often gets overlooked because maybe PSG is playing in the French league, and maybe not a lot of people are watching Ligue 1 week in, week out. But he got a rest against Nantes, a very deserved rest against Nantes yesterday, and Mendes too. They get caught a little bit high up the field sometimes, but who doesn't get caught when you're such high flying?
But they get back at times, right? It plays into it. But
often.
You're exactly right, though. They got rested. This is my number 1 point. This is what PSG is going for. The entire club is built around winning Champions League. This is what they have to play for. They've locked up their domestic league weeks ago. I mean, that's done and dusted. They've done that a million times. This is now an opportunity for them. They've built a squad with Luis Enrique to sustain a lot of games, to have rest in their domestic league right now, to play an athletic style with the players that they have. And this is all that PSG is focusing on right now.
So, Lisa, I was here a couple of weeks ago when they wrapped up the league. And if you remember, I said, we looked at it and said, well, it's what PSG does, right? They win Ligue 1. But I thought it was important because for a young team, you need to learn how to win things, right? Young players don't necessarily know how to win things. That's why for this particular group, Ligue 1 was really important to me. And then you take it to your point number 3, where all of a sudden when you get punched in the gut at Villa Park and now you have to battle, like these are all learning moments. These are all building blocks for Luis Enrique, which gets you to a point where you're saying, okay, this is the focus. Look, for PSG, Champions League has been the focus for the last 10, 12 years. It's building this project. They were one step away. It was a COVID year, right? 2020. It was at Bayern Munich. They lose in the final. So it's not as if they're that far away, right? There's been some upsets. The Barcelona game a few years ago. There's been moments where you're like, they let you down here. But this is the project for them, and they're playing about as good as anybody in the world right now.
Let me add something more. They wrapped up Ligue 1. But no team in France has ever won the league title top flight undefeated. And they could very well be that team. They're so convincing in the way that they play because it feels like Ligue 1, when Bayern wins the Bundesliga or PSG wins Ligue 1, we tend to just be like, all right, they did so. But that's completely kind of just glossing over the fact that they've shown consistency in their play. And not only that, at this point, it's evolution, it's progress, right? So imagine if they can go undefeated, even with rotating a lot of the guys, they rotated yesterday. Kang In Lee started. Obviously, the team was pretty strong regardless. Zaire Emery was playing right back. Still, I think they can get it done, and they're good on the road. Yesterday, by the way, they won their 29th game away in Ligue 1. That is a domestic record in Europe, beating Milan, who under Capello went 28 games unbeaten on the road.
Now that's a fun fact.
It is. It's also interesting because it'll keep them motivated. Sometimes obviously they're motivated on Champions League and that's what their goal is, but having that in Ligue 1 maybe keeps them just motivated all throughout the rest of this season with the focus going into that semifinals of the Champions League. Now, to play a little bit of devil's advocate, we talked about why PSG will win the Champions League. What's your reason for them to not win the Champions League?
PSG, and specifically against Leg 2, Aston Villa, they have shown a weakness defensively. Outside of Donnarumma, don't come box me out over here. But because their fullbacks get so high, there is space that is exposed. There was a couple of different instances throughout this season where on set piece marking and crosses in the box, they get disorganized in the box. And it's small mental lapses and moments that are far and few between for PSG, but they do happen and they occur. And specifically when you're looking at the competition of Arsenal and their set piece chances and what they've created, that if you're Arsenal, you are circling that and saying we are going to capitalize on set pieces, mismarking in the box.
I would say if you can force Vitinha to be sloppy, that's a massive key for Arsenal because Vitinha was sloppy against Aston Villa. He was playing passes that were so uncharacteristic of him, turning into pressure, trying to force things way too close to his own goal. And they're the rhythm of this team. They're the metronome, the midfield, specifically through Vitinha. So if you can get him to be off of his game, which is much easier said than done.
I would think getting in their own way would be an issue, right? And what I mean by that is not having a plan B. Sometimes you want to play one way, but you got to win a different way, right? And I think what we saw at Villa Park, they still wanted to play in this PSG style, which is very Barcelona-esque, right? Obviously, because of their manager and the way he's built this side. So if they don't have a plan B, sometimes when you're a young team, you get frustrated, you get nervous. That might be a stumbling block for them moving down the road.
Defensively, another thing that they obviously have to try to solve with the team from London. But Luis Enrique did say that he's not going to spend any extra time on set pieces. Do you think, Tony, that's a mistake?
To us. It's one big lie, right? It's a big part of what Arsenal do, right? But they'll be aware. I don't know if he's going to. He might be saying that because he already spends so much time on set pieces that he's not going to change his rhythm. But there's no doubt they have to be worried about it.
It'll be interesting for sure in the Champions League. This semifinal, both semifinals are going to be incredible to watch. And remember, you can watch them all right here on Paramount Plus and the Golazo Network.